Then he sneered. "You better not run away with your tail tucked between your legs." With that, Terry left with his men. What gave this man the balls to accept Augustus Klein's duel? He must be crazy. An idiot like him has no idea how scary a grandmother is. He'll definitely regret it later. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. The Jade Maiden Sisterhood disciples commented in malicious glee. They didn't think someone ordinary like Destin could win against a grandmother. The next day, the news had spread far and wide distant. The genius martial artist had challenged Augustus, the grandmother. The battle was set to happen at the battle ring in Shinefield. Like many people were excited to hear about the duel. Ever since Destin won the Knighthood Society tournament, all eyes were on him. The attention only became more intense as he became the prime suspect in Paul's death. People from both alliances caught wind of the duel, and now everyone was eager to watch the battle unfold by dawn. Many martial artists had arrived at Shinefield Lake. Most of them came because of Augustus. Augustus was a well-known grandmother. His name was familiar to the people in Balerno. He had been laying low for the past few years, but it didn't diminish his fame. After all, grandmasters were extremely rare. Most martial artists could only dream of meeting one inside the gazebo by the lake. Many important figures had gathered together. That included Ronald Reeds, the senior members of the Alliance, as well as several geniuses. A few Hill family members were also present. So Reeds, is the duel really going to happen? Will that guy actually challenge Sir Augustus? Spring asked. Most likely. The Doyle family already issued the challenge. It'll happen later in the afternoon, Shinefield Lake. Ronald nodded. His spies had been keeping an eye on Dustin. That was why Ronald knew everything that happened in Zephyr Lodge. Is he crazy? Why would he challenge Sir Augustus? Spring was confused. HMPH, that foolish brat. He better not think he has the right to challenge a grandmother just because he did okay in the tournament. Autumn sneered. Although Dustin was one of the strongest among his peers, he wasn't a match for someone as strong as Augustus. A grandmother was on a completely different level. "Dad, do you think he's hoping to be killed?" Torben asked. "Hoping to be killed." Autumn frowned. "What do you mean? Just think about it. Dustin killed Grandpa and became the Alliance's enemy. He also ingested Septa Mortis. He knows he isn't going to live long, so today's his last chance at fame. After all, being killed Sir Augustus will be much better than dying to poison." Torben explained. No wonder Destin had the balls to challenge Augustus. He must be hoping to die today. Being killed by a grandmother was a much more noble way to die. It was better than having poison tear him apart from the inside. "We meet again, Sir Reeds," someone said playfully. Everyone turned and saw Conrad smiling as he walked in with his men. "What brings you here, Sue Melling?" Ronald was surprised. "I heard about what's happening. There's no way I'd miss out on the show," Conrad answered. He stroked his beard after all. "It's been years since I watched a duel involving a grandmother." Conrad never left after Paul passed away. After all, he was curious to see how Balerno would handle this issue since you seem so interested. "Why don't you take seat?" Ronald smiled and invited everyone to. Conrad headed straight to the seat next to Ronald and sat down. "What do you think will happen during today's battle?" See Reeds. "A fight, of course," Ronald replied. "You're a funny man." Sit Reeds. Conrad smirked then. He said, "From what I heard, Sir Augustus is doing this to avenge his disciple. I bet that genius you like will have a hard time today. That's how life is. He'll have to decide his own fate." Ronald was calm. "Balemo rarely finds a genius like him. Are you sure you can bear to let him go?" Conrad smiled slyly. "He may be a genius, but if he's a terrible person, he's nothing more than a nuisance." Ronald answered swiftly. "He's right. That man killed my father. He deserves to die." Autumn spat. "Well, we'll see what happens." Conrad's smile deepened. He said nothing more. He was there solely to enjoy the show, and he couldn't wait for more internal conflicts within T. Valerno Martial Arts Alliance to breakout. Wow, look at those beautiful women! Someone from the audience shouted suddenly. Everyone turned to see a group of gorgeous women approaching them, each holding a sword. They were from Jade Maiden Sisterhood. Holy shit! Where did those chicks come from? They're gorgeous! Looking at their outfit, they should be from Jade Maiden Sisterhood. Jade Maiden Sisterhood. I've heard that its disciples only consist of beautiful and talented women. I guess it must be true. I couldn't be happier to see so many pretty women. I'd die a happy man if I could get one of as my wife. The men were excited by the new arrivals. Female martial artists were rare, but to see a group of beautiful female martial artists, that given they became the center of attention. Brittany, are all Valerno martial artists like this? They're like disgusting pigs. This tiny place is nothing compared to Oakville. You should keep your expectations low. After her brutal beating last night, her face was a mess. She didn't dare to show it to anyone. He's here, one of the sisterhood and disciples exclaimed. Everyone followed the direction she was pointing and saw a confident figure approaching. It was Dustin. When Dustin appeared, everyone's glares shot toward him like arrows. The crowd's eyes were filled with anger, resentment, shock, and scorn because of Paul's death. Dustin became public enemy number one, so everyone was eagerly waiting to see Augustus tear him apart. I didn't expect so many people to turn up. Cornelius surveyed the crowded lakeside and saw the hostile gazes. They're probably here to watch me make a fool of myself. Dustin was unfazed. He already knew that this wasn't going to be any ordinary duel. Sid, why don't we give up? A duel against a grandmother is no joke. Your life is more important than your pride, Cornelius warned in a low voice. He knew that Dustin was powerful. However, Augustus was one of Valerno's renowned grandmasters. The gap between the two of them was just too big. So far, no one has ever escaped the fate of being crushed by grandmasters. Why would we run away when we're already here? Dustin replied calmly, Sir, grandmasters are far stronger than any human can be. They're practically gods compared to regular martial artists. Please think this through. Cornelius' expression was grim. Don't worry. I know my limits. Dustin smiled. Augustus might be strong, but Dustin wasn't weak either. Dustin. Just then, Nikki appeared. She looked conflicted. Yes, Ms. Horst. Dustin's smile disappeared. His expression turned cold. The two of them had become strangers after yesterday night. I hope you forfeit the battle, Nikki said seriously. And why should I? Dustin responded. For your life, of course, Nikki preached. She added, Sir Augustus is a strong grandmother. You're no match for him. If you fight him, you'll die. That's none of your business. You should be caring for your mentor. Dustin remained emotionless. Stop acting like this. I'm telling you this for your own good. Why would you risk your life for nothing? Nikki frowned. And how do you know I'll lose when the battle hasn't even begun? Dustin retorted. Duh, Sir Augustus is a grandmother. But what about you? Nikki lectured patronizingly. She believed that victory was pure luck. So what are you trying to say? Dustin remained unaffected. Hang on, Nikki reached over to block Dustin again. Hesitantly, she began. I won't stop you if you insist on doing things your way. However, before that, I hope you can return the Jade Maiden scripture to me. After Edith passed out, the Jade Maiden scripture disappeared from her arms. So Nikki immediately assumed that Dustin must have taken it back. The scripture. Dustin was surprised then. He burst out laughing. That's what you were after this entire time, wasn't it? He thought. Nikki had finally come around and was trying to advise him for fear of his safety. It turned out that she was just putting on a show. Her goal was the Jade Maiden scripture. Dustin, the scripture is very important to me. Please return it. Nikki's expression was awkward, but there was a determined look in her eyes. I've already given it to you. Why are you asking me again? Dustin's expression turned stormy. Stop acting. I know you stole it. We can still be friends if you hand it over, Nikki said expressionlessly.